everybody. And in this video, we have with us Erin Silcox. Erin, welcome.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you.
Erin is a doctoral student who recently finished her comprehensive exams. Congratulations,
Woo.
Erin. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're over that hurdle, that one more hurdle. And while everybody's comprehensive exams, right, the process that you personally go through might not look exactly like what Erin went through, like what I went through, there are definitely some similarities. And so what we're going to be doing today is Erin's going to be sharing with us, I think you said it's going to be 3 things, right, that went really well. It's a lessons learned and a couple things that didn't, right? And we're going to be talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but we're going to be talking about the actual writing process of it. Is that correct? Or
yes.
Okay. Because your comprehensive exams, and not everybody's has this, but yours had a written and an oral defense component. So we're going to hone in on today are things that did and did not go well for you as far as the written component goes. So why don't we jump right in with the things that went well? What worked for you in looking back on this experience?
Number one, again, everybody's situation is different. I had 3 months, basically 90 days to write my comprehensive exams. And it worked for me to not write every single day and to take a break from it. And when, I may have written one day and not the next. But in addition to sort of taking time away from the writing, exercise by myself, like cardio, like slow running or riding my bike, really helped me A, stay sane, and B, think through these, big ideas, come to conclusions about maybe what I thought my data was saying. In other words, stepping away and thinking about my writing away from my computer really helped me to make some sort of breakthroughs with my data analysis and writing structure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because there is research that says, right, your brain is still processing, your brain is still thinking about these things, even when you are not sitting at your computer thinking about it. And in some cases, you're more likely to make those breakthroughs if you're stuck about something, when you are not sitting there trying to actively solve it at that moment. Yeah.
And this just dawned on me too. I think another piece was figuring out the balance between knowing when to step away and knowing when I needed to use the time to keep writing, and that I felt like I needed to stop, but I needed to really keep going. So it's a little contradictory, but there are moments where it feels like I need to step away, but I've only been working for like half an hour and I have a lot to get through, and I really just need to sit and keep writing.
Okay, so all right, so this is actually, I think, a really important point I think I want to make. So on the one hand, I'm guessing you had a schedule in place in terms of when you were going to write. But then, am I correct? Are you saying that maybe you've started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and maybe you said I'm going to write till 11? But at 8:30, you're like, this is not working for me, and I actually do need to step away for a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that I would feel like I needed a break, maybe. And like I would say to myself, oh, my brain's not working, I need to stop writing. But in reality, I had set that time up to write, and I just needed to keep writing. And then later, when I finally did step away, even if my writing was crap earlier that I made myself do, I might come, sort of saying 2 different things. Like, it was really important to step away, but at the same time, it was also important to stick to that schedule. And in that schedule, allow for time away.
Yes, no, I got you now. And that makes sense, because there are definitely times, and I went through it recently, where it's just painful to write.
Yeah.
But it is important that you sit through that. I know I've got other videos on this where I talk about that's part of the process. But you also don't want to overdo it and say, well, I said I was going to write from 8 to 11 or whatever I said, and I really only produced a page and it's garbage, so I'll just keep making myself do that, because then you can burn out.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, great advice.
Total balance.
Yeah. So what else do you have for us? What's your second big thing?
So I had to revise my comprehensive exam, and when I went back to do the revision, what helped a lot was to look at and decide whose data analysis process I was going to apply before I did the analysis.
Can I back up a second? When you say
Yeah.
whose data analysis I'm going to, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I can. So what I mean is, there's something like the grounded theory process that
Lincoln and Guba.
Glasser and Strauss is the one that I used, where you do open coding and then you do axial coding, and you sort of use their process to start pretty abstract, from the ground up, and inductive. You start inductive and then you move to a more deductive approach. Yeah. But then a very similar one is like Saldana and folks, the qualitative data analysis.
He's published with a number of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are different models you can use. They have different words.
It's okay.
Yeah, they have different words. But it was helpful to, the first time I did it, I was like, oh, well, whenever I code, I use qualitative data analysis methods, and I start with inductive and then I move to deductive, but I didn't have somebody's words to apply exactly step by step to what I was doing. And so what helped in the revision was to have a few steps in mind ahead of time. And then as I did those, document exactly how I applied those steps.
Right. So I think like a way to think about this, that people watching this might think about, your comprehensive exam was a literature review. And that's a pretty common thing to have to do, particularly in the social sciences, is a lit review or an essay, but and an essay would be a completely different ballgame. But if we think about it in terms of a literature review, really what you're saying you need to do, and I recommend everybody do this, even if you're just writing just a literature review for the sake of writing a literature review, right? Is have a data analysis journal. That's essentially what I hear you say.
Yes.
And that's a step that you skipped, I'm guessing, the first time, maybe?
Like I tracked my process, but I hadn't aligned it with an expert, right, in their approach. So I wasn't able then to go back and cite whose process I used. And then my committee was like, this isn't reliable. We don't know, whose process did you follow? Did you just make it up?
Right.
So it was like, oh yeah, okay, well, I understand now. So
all right. So then what was the third piece of advice?
So the third piece is very similar to the second piece, I would say. But basically, I really benefited from analyzing several mentor texts for any section that I was writing. So if I was trying to write the introduction, I analyzed like 5 similar introductions to what I was trying to write to see what goes where, how much are you writing about it, how many topics do they talk about? And it really just helped me to then synthesize the information from those mentor texts to know what it should look like. And then also in terms of synthesizing information from experts, if I was writing a section, it benefited from starting with the literature rather than like journaling what I thought I should write and then backing it up with the literature.
Yep. And then the nice thing about that too is not just can you see how many topics did they talk about? Like if you're thinking about an introduction, for example, is you can look at how they logically connect these ideas together and how they show where the gaps are and demonstrate a need and that sort of thing. So you can really get a lot out of that.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. And so I still struggle to write an introduction, but it helped. And I feel like I learned a lot from that process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, an introduction writing is really, really hard. Even to this day, I think that. So that's 3 things that you thought really went well for you, but you've got 2 things that are more like things that didn't go so well, or?
Well, what? Yes. And from what I just explained, you can tell that a lot of what went well came from making mistakes initially. But these are things that just didn't work. Two
Things
things that
that don't work when doing your comps. Okay.
didn't work. The first was questioning what goes where and what to include. And again, this goes back to writing the introduction. So, well, no, that's not true. What I'm talking about is questioning basically like what to include in the paper and what doesn't need to be there.
Do you mean like sort of overthinking?
Yes, exactly. Overthinking.
Not
In my
trusting.
initial introduction that was scrapped, I included way too many topics. And then throughout the paper, my organization just wasn't very clear and concise. And so what helped was in that revision was like making an argument, knowing what the argument was, and then everything else backed the argument up.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise,
even show like counter arguments and things like that, but it's all in service of that argument. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, and my topic is trauma-informed literacy instruction. So I was like, oh, well, I need to talk about how standardization is a problem for trauma-affected youth. And you were like, wait, what does this have to do with?
Well, there's lots of stuff that's related to that topic, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then you get the stress from comps and you get anxiety and you get doubt. And, I think for me, when I did my comprehensive exams, the benefit, I mean, some people might say this is not a benefit, but I think the benefit for me that you didn't have, because you had 3 months.
Yeah.
Right. So I had, 1 day with one question, 1 day with another question, and then 10 days to do a lit review. And with that lit review, that 10 days meant that I didn't have time to start going down rabbit holes. I had to get real focused real fast, right? But if you've got like a month to spend on a paper, you can start saying, well, this looks related and this looks related. And, you have more time for that self-doubt to set in, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the bike rides I was talking about before, I'd be like, oh, well, I need to talk about like urban settings. I was like, wait, no. And then I'd come back and be like all lit up about something that was just completely unrelated.
But I mean, it's related, but not related, right? Like it's
right.
probably related, but then it gets down to what is that argument and what are the big, and even then, not everything related to that argument on that paper. So what are the big key important things that need to go into that paper that serve that argument? Yeah. Excellent point. And what was the other thing that didn't work?
Getting confused about the purpose of the paper. So I had 3 papers. One was theoretical frameworks that have been used to study my topic. Another one was the methods, how researchers have used what methods they've used to study my topic. And then the third one was what have been the findings of studies on my topic. And I wrote in my theory paper, in my methods paper, I wrote about theory. In my methods paper, I was way too abstract. And instead of like saying this, there were a lot of case studies and there were a lot of studies in urban settings. I went and was like explaining how they used the methods to meet certain goals. It was just like, what am I lost focus of the purpose of the paper. And that was a mess.
Which I think gets back to like a piece of advice that you can say to people, right? I think that would work is be very mindful of the purpose of your paper. I talk a lot about when you're writing up a research study, and you could do this for a lit review, right? I write that research question out and I hang it up on the wall where I can see it, because I will do this. I will just start going off down this rabbit hole, and we all do that. But when I'm editing, right, you want to be able to look, I kind of look up or look off to the side and go, oh, that's my question. And this is not about that. And it's a great sentence or paragraph or idea, but it doesn't go in this paper.
Yep.
Yeah. So keeping that focus in mind. Well, thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your tips with us. I know it's a really stressful experience to have to go through. But you're done. You're over. Congratulations. And hopefully we can have you back on when you've defended your dissertation and you can give people some advice about dissertation research and writing. That'd be great.
I'm in the weeds on the dissertation right now. So I'll be back someday.
You'll be back soon. It'll be here quicker than you know it.
Oh gosh, I hope so.
Well, again, thank you. And if
Yep.
you've got any questions about comprehensive exams, put them in the comments. We'd love to hear it and talk to you about it further.